Hello and welcome to episode 27 of When Life Gives You Lemons, Go Vegan. I'm your host Corinne Nidja, and just a disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. See a doctor, see a second or third doctor, preferably see a doctor who is plant-based. Dr. Malcolm Mackay is a great plant-based doctor here in Melbourne, Fitzroy, and he also does Skype consults, so check him out. Now, this week I'm chatting to Penelope about her accidental recovery from IBS and Hayfever after watching Netflix documentary Cowspiracy and going vegan for the health of the planet. It's an amazing story. If you've ever been bloated, gassy, constipated or had the runs, this episode is for you. Enjoy. So, hello Penelope. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for getting in touch. And I'm so looking forward to hearing your story today because I think, well, I had IBS symptoms for a long time. And I think so many listeners will benefit from hearing your story because not everyone has, heart disease or type 2 diabetes or multiple sclerosis like in my case. But loads and loads and loads of people have miscellaneous, unpleasant digestive issues. And we could really, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, gas, all those types of things. And I think could really benefit from hearing your message today. So thank you so much. And please share with us your story.
Yay. Cool. So it was kind of an unexpected side effect because we went vegan, for the environment and for the animals. We kind of jumped on the bandwagon when we watched some Netflix stuff like Cowspiracy and whatever.
It's a good bandwagon to jump on.
Yeah. And then 3 weeks after being vegan, so I'm still very new vegan, I was like, hang on a second. I haven't felt like all that the normal, niggly, everyday feelings of IBS. So I was like, I haven't felt really bloated or gassy and I haven't had diarrhea for, all this time. So I was like, I'll give it a go. And so I tried a little bit of garlic and I was fine. And then so I had fructose intolerance, which meant that, onion, garlic, apples, pears, that sort of stuff all really disagreed with me. Yeah, so after 3 weeks of being vegan, I started reintroducing things into my diet and I found that everything was fine, which was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I sort of started realizing that other things were helped as well. So I used to have really, really bad hay fever. And I've just realized that I've just gone through a whole spring and summer without needing to take any antihistamines at all. So yeah.
I think that hay fever as well is my husband had, literally he was not without a hanky for the whole first almost 10 years we met. He'd just be blowing his nose and just surrounded by tissues and so revolting. And I would say, just try cutting out dairy. And he'd say, no, I've had it my whole life. It's just the way it is. I'm allergic to everything. And then just recently, even today, he was saying that my mum and him used to bond over their allergies, their hay fever. Be like, oh God, how's your hay fever? Oh, mine's terrible. Oh, mine's, I think it was great to not great, but just have that in common, And she said my mum 2 nights ago was here and she said to him, oh, how's your hay fever? And he was like, he's been vegan this year and he was just but he's been eating mostly vegan for a couple of years now. And he just said, I don't really, I have it maybe one. I used to have antihistamines every day just to get through the day. And he said, I haven't had antihistamines for longer than he can remember. And he said, and I know it's because of eating this way because nothing else worked. He had injections. He went to doctors and rounds of treatments for it. And then he had a naturopath treatment for it. And I think he had an acupuncture treatment for it and nothing worked but a vegan diet. So it's pretty cool.
It's so funny how integrated the body is. And I think learning more about veganism and what it can help and listening to your podcasts and stuff, you start to realize that, your body isn't all different separate systems. It's all running as one thing. And, what you put in it, of course, is going to impact like all of the systems and what it does and how it works. And particularly on like inflammatory diseases and stuff, like you find a lot of inflammation markers in animal products and things, and in edible plants there's all anti-inflammatory compounds. So it kind of makes sense that eating plant-based will help calm those sort of systems. Yeah, so it's kind of like everything's connected. Everyone should just, understand.
I know. I think doctors think that people who are interested in holistic health, that the word holistic means that we're just hippies. But holistic just means look at the whole package, like you say, rather than looking at us as, I'm a neurologist. I just focus on your nervous system, your head and your spinal cord. And I'm a chiropractor. I'm just into the bones. And I'm a gynecologist, proctologist, all the bits, podiatrist. And they just focus on these sections of the body. And it's great to be an expert in those areas. But if they worked in collaboration together more, I think they'd have such more, well, we know that they have such better outcomes when they do work in collaboration. But they all like to think that they're
distinct, yeah.
That they have the whole answer is in the part that they're looking at. When the whole answer is in, most often it's just in your gut. Let's face it. 70% of our health is in our immune systems, in our intestines and gut.
Yeah.
So it's just funny that they're like, no, it's just here. This is where I'm actually doing hand signals, realizing that this is a podcast where there's no visuals. So
in this section,
I was framing my head. Sorry, because I was just specifically thinking about neurologists. I'm not saying that those doctors are inherently bad. I'm just saying that it's much more interwoven than what mainstream medicine seems to give credit to.
And I think now there is a second wave coming out that they're going, oh, hang on, this does impact on this, like especially with gut health and how it relates to mental health. Like there's a lot higher rates of major depressive disorders in people who suffer from digestive problems. And they're starting to realize that there's a whole interlinking system going on there. I mean, there's a lot of nerves and stuff in your gut as well, so it kind of makes sense that way. And there's research that suggests that the bacteria that are colonizing your gut, which relates to what you're eating, they can influence what your brain is doing and what cravings you have. So I kind of think like when people are all like, oh, I could never go vegan because I really like chicken or I really like bacon, it's kind of like, well, is that you talking or is that the bacteria that you're cultivating in your little gut there, like...
It's I love that you said that, because I think so many people do say that, and you are what you eat it's such a simple throwaway remark, but it's just so true. What we eat, we become addicted to in our gut, and it feeds the microbiome bacteria in our guts, and then we crave that more and more, and it's just this vicious cycle until we are. Well, in many cases, we are unwell to some extent, which is such a shame, because they are addictive, and I don't think most people don't realize how addictive foods are. Not just because processed foods are designed to be addictive, like I'm not even talking about the casein in milk and dairy products. In like the Cokes and the McDonald's and all those things are designed to just get us crazy.
Yeah. High salt, high fat, like your body's like, oh, yeah, I need that. But it's like, yeah, that was fine when we were, you came across a bush that had berries on it and you're like, yes, I'll eat all of the berries. But like when you come across a packet of gummy bears, that's not the right thing to be eating. But your brain is still like, kind of, oh, yes, this sugar.
Yes, definitely. And that Doug Lisle, I don't know if, I'm sure you are aware of Doug Lisle's work. So he wrote the book The Pleasure Trap. If you haven't read it, get your hands on it. It's really, really good at explaining exactly what Penelope is saying about in biologically, and I'm not talking about the paleo diet, but I'm not talking about the paleo diet's translation of what the ancestors used to eat. I'm talking about biologically, in the wild, we would sit and eat a whole pile of berries because we might not find berries for a really long time. But now when we're cramming in food, we're surrounded by an abundance of high calorie foods, and we still have that same, we need to eat to satiation because we may not eat again for a really long time. And unfortunately, that's not the case for us. So we eat again in 2 hours or 3 hours to the same volume, and then wonder why we have an obesity epidemic, because the foods that we're eating are so rich and high in calories, and we literally are wired to seek out the highest calories to prevent us from dying of famine.
And I think it's a really good point as well. Like, I think it's Dr. McDougall that has it in his book, but it's like about, everybody says, oh, go for moderation. Like, if you have everything in moderation, you'll be fine. But the problem with that is that our brain is not wired for moderation. Like, we can't stop because, if you were in the wild and you lucked on some sort of resource, your brain is wired to say, eat all of it. So it's really important to be like, if you have the willpower, maybe moderation is great, but most of us just don't. And you can see it. Like, if you walk around, like go to the supermarket or whatever and just look at all the people, there's a lot of massive people out there, but it's just a shame. Like, some of them think they're doing the right thing and they're like, oh, why can't I lose weight or whatever? Or, yeah, so.
It's really tricky, and it's difficult because we are as a species, we are super, super smart in creating all of these foods that I guess post World War II, we needed foods that had a long shelf life. So we were really trying to make foods and create foods that lasted a long time in case all the men had to go off to war again and there was no food left, no farmers out there working in the fields and creating, growing food to feed the women and the children and the people who were left behind in war. And so I understand that. Unfortunately, we've gone too far, and those foods should have been, that they were, canned foods were great, but they went too far with too much processed, packaged, refined foods, too high in fat, too high in sugar, too high in salt, which the sugar and the salt do create a long shelf life, but unfortunately, a very short human life.
It's like, well, these foods are designed to be survival foods, like if you're dying and there's nothing around, of course, like go grab the can of beans. Well, beans are usually good, but, grab whatever, have
Twinkie.
Your sugar snack. Yeah. It's like, yes, it will keep you alive, but there is a difference between living and thriving, and I think the body just does much better on foods that it was kind of evolved eating, and that's, your whole foods. But it's funny that this isn't just out there. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Everybody's like, yeah, we should be eating more fruits and vegetables, but I don't think they realize how important it is and how much better they could feel. And, everybody's like, oh, well, you're a vegan. You're just trying to get everyone to change their mind. I'm like, well, I just want you to feel healthy like I do. It's really hard because obviously they've got the marketing everywhere that says, oh, eat this or even that, if you want to be healthy, eat this tub of yogurt that's chocked full of sugar and it's low fat though,
Or it's high in, this Fruit Loops are high in fiber, and you're like, oh God. They might have some fiber in them, sure, but your body just doesn't need rainbow-colored, refined, high-sugar junk food in it that's also high in fiber. Like, anyway, it's crazy. But yeah, those marketing is just so manipulative, and it's no wonder people buy into it because they market saying organic, but it just might mean that like was once made of plants. It's not actually anything in it that's organic. Yeah. It's natural flavoring, and the flavoring's natural, but it's like really far removed from the original natural thing, but it kind of once was natural, so that means it's natural.
It's like, well, salt is natural, but it doesn't mean that you could have it, in tubs and tubs and tubs and be fine. Like, and arsenic is natural, but that doesn't mean it's good for you, it's funny how
Uranium's natural, but
yeah. Not sure I'd like to shovel that in.
Maybe I don't want uranium laced ice cream.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very tricky. And I think it's difficult because there's lots of confusing, that I had this conversation recently, like, eggs are good again, eggs are great again. Everyone knows now that healthy cholesterol is good cholesterol and your body needs healthy cholesterol. So we should start eating eggs again. And it's tricky because there is science in inverted quotations that says the science is in. Eggs are back on the menu. Eat as much for animal fats as you can, shovel them in. Unfortunately, those people like that. It's true. There is so much confusing things, but Dr. Esselstyn's work is the only work that has removed animal products and has been able to reverse and halt heart disease. There is no other science or research that's done that. And that work said no eggs. And there's no other heart disease reversal that says, have as many eggs as you like. No one's reversing heart disease by including eggs, but, there is research that says if you like eggs, go ahead. And you're like, well, if you like heart disease, go ahead and eat the eggs.
It's like, ugh. Then that's the thing, like a lot of research that comes out, and this is, again, going back to we're segmenting everything and we're thinking that we understand it, but it is more integrated than that. And there is a lot of science out there that's like, yes, well, protein is great. But they're looking at, they're thinking that the whole is the sum of its parts. And it's like, we need protein. So eat this thing because it's mostly protein. And I was like, well, actually, your body does seem to function much better on things that have the protein, but they also have the dietary fiber and whatever else. And they're not having an overabundance of one nutrient. They've got, balance of nutrients. And I think the only balanced diet you can have is with plant foods, because plant foods have all of the things you need in the levels that you need. Whereas, animal products, yes, they do have proteins and fats and things which your body does need, but they've got so much protein. They're mainly protein and they're mainly fat, and there's no fiber. There's no, other things that your body needs as well. And I think, if you're looking at the science, it will say your body needs protein. And then people will be like, oh, cool, let's eat animal products because they've got the highest amount of protein. I was like, well, actually, that's too much. Your body doesn't need that much protein.
I think because it has been so confusing, I personally, I completely get that people get, that was too many gets, but I completely get that people get so overwhelmed with the current misinformation, information around the best, most optimal diet for humans to thrive on. And I think for me, the way I've simplified it is to look at the blue zones. Now, Okinawa was a blue zone. It's no longer a blue zone because they have incorporated so much meat, dairy, eggs and processed foods into their diet now that they no longer are counted as a blue zone. But blue zones are, for people who are listening, they are the places in the world who have the highest number of thriving people who live into their hundreds. And majority, well, all those blue zones, things that they have in common is a high amount of higher level of plant-based ratio between plant eating and meat eating. So they mostly live on a plant-based diet, mostly high starches like whole grains, potatoes, root vegetables, corn, maize, that type of thing. And those places, those communities, those little patches of areas with these people who are living and thriving into the old age. They're not just decaying miserably into their old age. They're thriving into their old age, thriving into their into living over 100. They're the ones eating a high whole food plant-based diet, very, very, very low in fats. They have very little heart disease, very little cancers. They they were thriving on a plant-based diet, and they're the only places that were. You can look all across. People often look to the Inuits and the Maasai tribes looking for populations that don't have disease but consume high meat diets. Unfortunately, those first of all, the Inuits had a very short lifespan typically. And same with the paleo ancestors. People often talk about the paleo diet being the way we're designed to live, but those populations live to like 25, 45 years old. You don't want to mimic a population that dies before they get to 40. It's just not an ideal diet.
Also, like the paleo diet that we have, it does not match what humans were eating in the Paleolithic era. Like, yeah, we had some meat, but it was like
bacon.
Yeah, no, we didn't eat bacon, and mostly we still ate whole grains and whatever. Like, and people are like, oh, well, I'll cut out flour. It's like, well, no, we were milling flour. It was just whole grain flour at the time. So if you have wholemeal flour, that's what we were eating in the Paleolithic era. It's like people love to jump on these things. They're like, yes, I can eat as much bacon as I want or whatever. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's based in science. And it's like, well, actually, it's not, because that's not even true. It's just somebody's used that. But
exactly. And like the gathering part of the Paleolithic time was far more of what we ate than the hunting part. The hunters weren't that successful. It was really difficult to hunt and capture an animal and kill. So when they did eat meat, it was very rare. Now people who are on a paleo diet are eating meat for breakfast, lunch and dinner, when that just wouldn't have been the case. They would have been eating berries, grains, wild plants, tubers, etc.
And the proportions would have been so much smaller, like they would be having a whole big bowl of bacon. They'd be having, maybe one bit of meat, and, their whole tribe would be eating the one thing that they caught, over whatever long. So it's very warped. People, I think, just try and, because there's always a way you can cherry pick science to fit whatever you want to say, but it's just, yeah.
Which is why, to go back to the blue zones are a great reason to say, okay, what are the thriving populations across history been doing? They've been doing a low-fat, whole-food, plant-based diet. So go with that. Everything else, forget. They weren't doing a bacon diet. They weren't doing their Atkins diet. They weren't doing paleo diet. They were doing a whole-food, plant-based diet and living into their hundreds. So if you want to live well and thrive, just research them and have a look at how they ate and how they lived.
And the other thing is that, like that's what's been on your podcast, it's not only that they're living longer, it's that they're really thriving. They don't have as much arthritis or eczema or all these things, these chronic diseases that we have in our society. And it's kind of like a little warning bell that something's wrong with what we're putting in the body, because our body's trying to deal with it in a certain way, and then finally it's like enough is enough, this is going to happen or whatever. Like, and like you've often said, a healthy body doesn't just start attacking itself, like. And for me, like, it was a big kind of wake-up call. Like, why is my body, like, why am I getting all this pain? Why am I getting this diarrhea and stuff? Like, this isn't what a normal body should be doing. And, like, it comes back to what a normal body should be eating, and it's not meat.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to that, you were talking about fructose malabsorption. So how long have you been living with fructose malabsorption?
It was about 3 years. So not as long as some other diseases, but I was pretty bad.
Yeah. Describe your disgusting fructose symptoms to us. This is a safe space, Penelope. Go for it.
Yeah. Bringing up poop again.
It's every episode.
Digestive issues. Yeah, so I sort of started feeling, and it was funny because my mother-in-law had fructose malabsorption, so I was kind of aware of like what it was. And I'd had a really bad kidney infection, and I think like I have a lot of theories about IBS, and I think it's all really closely linked to your microbiome. Anyway, so I had really bad kidney infection. I had really high doses of antibiotics. And after I finally got better from that, I started noticing all these gut issues. And I was like, oh, I just feel so yuck all the time. And then I ate an apple, and I think that was just like the tipping point. And I have never felt so sick. I was like, got the pain, and I was just sitting on the toilet for ages. I was like, oh, this is awful. And then I was like, oh, I know that Carmen, my mother-in-law, can't eat apples. It must be the same thing. So then I started seeing, like, okay, do I get sick if I eat onions? Yes, I do. Okay, let's not eat onions again. And so it was kind of like I could manage it, but yeah, I just wasn't feeling quite right. And the doctor was kind of like, oh, yeah, well, we don't really know what it is. They did all of the tried to see if I had Crohn's disease or celiac disease or all of those things, ruled them all out. And then they were like, oh, well, by default, your diagnosis is IBS. So you're just going to have to deal with feeling yuck. And I was like, oh, so is there any treatment or cures or anything? And they're like, oh, no, like peppermint oil can help people, but pretty much you just live with it. And sometimes it disappears sporadically and sometimes it doesn't. And I was like, why aren't they looking into why in those cases it disappeared and in other cases it didn't? Like, why don't they know? Like, why don't they know why?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of like a bit glum because the doctor kind of seemed like, oh, well, this is just what you're going to live with now. Anyway, so I kind of accepted that a little bit, and I just managed myself like at home. It was kind of like a big change for me because I was like, how am I going to cook a decent meal without onion and garlic? Like, that's the base for everything. But anyway, I figured out like what foods made me sick, what didn't. But it was still like just so hard going out because restaurants don't understand what fructose malabsorption is, and they don't understand, which foods have too many oligofructans. Like, they just don't know. So often they would muck up and then I would get sick, and it's just not very pleasant to be running to the toilet in the middle of a restaurant, and then being like, oh, I'm really embarrassed because, it stinks and it's not nice. And yeah, but and I remember one time I went to this place and I said to the waiter, like, oh, last time I came here I had this, and then he came back and was like, we can't make a custom meal for you. You've got to pick something on the menu and then I'll alter it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do that. And he's like, I know all about fructose. And I was like, oh, could you just come back and tell me what's in it before you make the meal, because just in case I can't have anything. He's like, no, I know what it is. So I was like, okay. And then it came out and it had cashews all over it. I'm like, I know I can't eat cashews, but I didn't want to send it back because they'd been embarrassing this back and forth. So I tried to pick it all out and I put them all to the side, but there must have been some crushed in it. And I remember, like, within 15 minutes I had the most severe, like, gut pain, and I had to run to the toilet, and then I was sitting on the toilet and the people who were with me were kind of like, oh dear, are you okay? And then I was like, oh, this is just the pits. Like, I'm so sick of feeling like this. So then, I just wouldn't really eat out unless it was a FODMAP-friendly restaurant or whatever. And I started, like, looking into veganism, and I found the FODMAP-friendly vegan. So if anyone has IBS and they want to go vegan and they think, oh, well, how am I going to do that without beans and stuff, because that's a major thing for vegans, I'd recommend getting on her website because it's really helpful. Like, she tells you how to, get all your nutrients and all of that. Anyway, so I started kind of, like, going down that route. I never expected it to disappear when I went vegan. That's why I went with her stuff. But I think it helped that we went cold turkey, because I do think it was to do with the microbiome. And the fact that we did a major dietary shift, I think that shifts your microbiome really significantly. There's a bit of evidence to suggest that. And I think that's what got rid of whatever was making me sick. And then suddenly I could eat what I wanted again. So, yeah.
Wow, so it was kind of like you did a really, really rapid elimination diet.
It's easy for me because I was like, I'm so used to making the connection between this food is making me sick, just don't eat it again, because I was so, like, as soon as I'd had cashews and they made me sick, I was like, I'm never touching those again. So, like, it made it easy for me to make the connection between meat is making me sick and milk is making me sick and all of that. So I think that really helped the transition, because I was like, oh yeah, elimination is just daily life for me.
Wow. And so within 3 weeks you started noticing a difference?
Yeah, and I was just sort of sitting there one day and I was like, it's been 3 weeks, about a month or whatever, and I was like, I have not felt bad. Like, and usually even if I wasn't feeling sick, like if I hadn't eaten something like garlic or something and had diarrhea or whatever, I would still feel like heavy and bloated and stuff. And I was like, you know what, I'm feeling really good. Like, I wonder if I might be a little bit better, and I just thought maybe I can have little bits of things now. And so I tried a little bit of, I knew garlic was one of the things that sometimes people get a little bit more tolerant to, so I tried some of that. And I was like, it's fine. And I tried a whole, like we had 3 cloves of garlic in this meal, and I was like, I'm fine. And then I ate a whole apple, and I was like, I'm fine. And I was like, it's just gone, which was just crazy. And everyone, you know, around me was like, what the hell? Like, you had this such significant problem, and now, like, you know, it's almost overnight. It's just gone.
That is so good. That is such a relief. So just while we're here, what was your diet like before and after? Like, tell us the difference so people can see, listeners can see or can hear about what you were eating like and what you're eating like now.
Yeah, well, we thought we were being pretty healthy. Like, I think a lot of people do. You know, most of our food wasn't red meat. You know, we'd have red meat maybe once or twice a week, but it was mostly chicken. But we would have meat for every dinner. Like, didn't really ever have a vegetarian meal. And if it was, it had eggs on it. You know, like I'd have eggs for breakfast and, you know, sometimes oats. But, like, I kept getting sick from different types of fruit. So I would usually have, if I did have oats, it would be in milk, and I would have like apples or whatever on it. But then I started getting sick from that, so I had to kind of strip it back. And so really what I was having was, you know, toast with eggs for breakfast or, you know, whatever. Yeah, and then a lot of, you know, always butter, always, it's like, when you start thinking back, you're like, actually, I did have, every meal had animal products in it, which we thought was fine. Yeah, we didn't eat a lot of processed foods. Like, we didn't eat foods out of packets because usually they have garlic and onion in them. But, yeah, so we make all of our food from scratch. But again, like, you know, part of the typical diet of Australians, like, everything's based in oil. So, you know, you chuck your oil in there, then your meat, and then you kind of build on that. So, yeah, that was kind of what we were eating. And it was funny, we decided to go vegan like the day after we just done this massive grocery shop. And lucky we had...
So annoying.
Yeah. And we're like, oh, what do we do? Do we eat the rest of this and then do it, or what do we do? And then we had friends come over and we're like, no, you know what? We don't want to eat it. So we just gave them all of this stuff we'd bought, you know, bulk buy, chicken.
Mental note, never watch Netflix documentaries after you shop. Wait till the end of the week when the pantry's bare.
And it was just so amazing. Like, we gave all this stuff away, and it was like the first meal we're like, well, what do we do? You know, like, there's no meat. How do we start the meal? And I think, like, yeah, a lot of people are just so afraid of it because it's such a normal thing, you know. You go to make your dinner and everything is based in oil and meat. So that was what we were eating.
So what did you eat that first vegan meal? What was your first vegan meal? Do you remember? I wouldn't have a memory. Mine's been too long.
I think it was a curry because we liked our curries. And
that's a good gateway.
Yeah, and usually they were chicken-based, but we're like, oh, what could we do instead? And I think we did it with potato. So it was like a potato curry. And then we sort of started getting into the tofu and all of that sort of stuff as well. We're still not really like low-fat, whole food, plant-based. I don't think my husband will ever go that route because he loves his chips and his oil-based things. But, you know, we didn't even know that was a thing when we first went vegan. So it's so funny how, and I think on your last podcast I listened to, it was Christine, I think, who said, you know, I found this healthful way of eating, you know, through Dr. Greger's How Not to Die and all of that. But I would never have found all of that had I not already been vegan. How do we get this little pocket of the world out so that people who are really struggling with heart disease and just think, oh, well, it's nothing to do with what I'm eating. And it's like, but it is. And maybe just give it a go, you know. But I don't know how to get that out there because until I was vegan, I didn't know about all of these health things. And now it's just like expanded this entire world, you know. where I've read that book by Dr. Greger, I've got the China study, I've got the starch solution, and I'm like, oh, it makes so much sense, you know. But people.
It's so tricky, and it is such a very fringe group, but it's growing and growing and growing, but it is still very fringe. And like you said, I would never have found it if I hadn't have. Well, I was eating similar, and then I went vegan, and then I found the low-fat whole foods from there. But I was eating low-fat with seafood for multiple sclerosis, which wasn't about veganism. It was about multiple sclerosis healing. And then I went vegan because I only had, like I say, I only had fish and honey left, so it was no big deal. Egg whites. So I didn't have much to lose.
Yeah. But so much to gain. I think
so much to gain.
That's another thing. I try and be like, just give it a go to these people who I can see struggling with, whether it be IBS or whatever else they have. And I'm like, you know what? There's no bad side effects. Like if you make sure you're getting all the right things, like if you're eating whole foods, there are no bad side effects. No one's going to feel worse. Like you're not going to suddenly have iron deficiency or whatever. Like there are actually lower rates of iron deficiency in vegans than in meat eaters. But anyway, but there's so many good side effects, and it's kind of like, why don't you just give it a go, Because there's all this you could gain and really nothing to lose except for, your meat that, 2 weeks later after you've stopped eating it, you don't even want it.
How's your husband been? Because men are often more, to generalise, find it more difficult to lose the animal-based foods. How did he go?
Such a manly thing, you're cooking your steak or whatever.
Your barbecue and your tongs and, know.
But, he's been okay. I think, as we've found more and more things that are delicious and vegan, it's kind of been like, I can have this. And I think we've gained a little bit of weight because we're all like, I wonder if you could veganize this dish or this one. So, all get on the junk food.
I have been down that road myself. With cake. When I first went this way of eating, I kept making cake.
Yeah.
I was like, can I make a cake that's vegan that's tastes like this cake that I really liked? And all the rest of my family wouldn't eat it because they wouldn't want it. They didn't care about cake. But so then I'd have a whole cake there and I'd be like, well, what am I going to do? I got to eat this whole thing.
Yeah. Together we've found things that we were missing that we could replace. And for him, he was a massive cheese eater. So I didn't think that he'd go vegan just because he loved his cheese platters and his mozzarella on his pizzas and all of that. But yeah, we found some cheese recipes. We haven't been able to find a good hard cheese yet, but we've got this mozzarella cheese that's made by the Buddhist chef who's really good, which we use. Obviously, it's not low fat.
No.
So, but it just helps him get over the line, I think, and those sort of replacements.
And I think there's definitely a place. If you have heart disease, obviously steer as far away from the high fat foods as possible. But if you're just listening to this podcast and you're just thinking about going vegan, but otherwise fairly healthy, those transition foods like the cheeses, vegan chocolates, vegan junk food, if they're what's going to push you over the edge into being able to commit to this way of eating, I say go for it because it's still better for the planet. It's still better for the animals. It's just not that great for your health. But I mean, 2 out of 3 ain't bad sometimes.
Yeah. And even still, even though we're still eating a little bit of oil and stuff, it still made a massive difference. To him, he had I don't know, he'd sweat a lot and he'd just be general manly, had some skin issues and stuff, which have all really cleared up, which is sort of a happy side effect as well. Even though we're not the healthiest of vegans, it's still been healthful, just to do that. There's been, and my hay fever and stuff, it's still going to have a health benefit because you're getting rid of those animal products that aren't great for you.
Yeah. Well, your microbiome hates them.
Yeah.
So,
And the ones, and it just makes sense, like, to me, I don't know if it's very scientific or not, but if you're eating meat, right, and there's bacteria living on that meat and eating that meat, and you put that in your body and you are made of meat, it kind of makes sense that you're going to have more pathogenic bacteria coming into your system because they're sitting on things that are quite similar to you, and eating those, maybe they're not great for you. Whereas if they're sitting on a plant, eating a plant, that's not going to hurt you,
yes. So now, how did your family and friends take your transition? Because lots of people find that they are keen to eat this way and to change their diets, but then they are faced for the first time with a friend who challenges them or a family member who challenges them, and they're like, oh, maybe I should buy some cheese for guests when they come, and now it's going moldy, so I better eat the cheese because I haven't had guests for a couple of weeks. Or a friend of theirs is saying, oh, challenging their beliefs about why they've gone vegan or what. Have you had any pushback, and how have you found that?
I have, and it's really, I like to engage in debates and stuff, so I'm not, which is good because I'm not really a kind of person to back down, and I'm like, oh, I'll come back at you with all of this science, sort of behind me. It's been good. I've sort of felt like really shocked that everybody doesn't want to fully embrace it like I have, because I go, I didn't know. And as soon as I found out, I was like, yes, we're making the switch and this is so good. And oh my gosh, I can't believe nobody told me before. And why isn't everybody screaming this from the rooftops? But then I go to someone, a family member who has this or that issue, and I go, you know what? Like, I've read about veganism helping this issue. And isn't that fantastic? And oh my gosh, get excited. And they're like, oh yeah, cool. And I'm like, why aren't you so excited about this? Yeah, other than that, like, I've had we do family dinner and stuff, and they always make us vegan food, and if we host it, then everybody will eat the vegan food and not grump at us.
Good.
That's good. So we've been really lucky that we've got a really supportive family. Still fingers crossed that I'll get everybody into this way of eating, but I think, like, as you mature in your vegan journey, I think everybody kind of goes, some people just won't change, and you've got to somehow come to terms with that. Because I just didn't understand why people were going, oh no, I'm going to stick with what I'm eating, because I'm like, no, it's killing you. Like, oh my God. Like, I've read this, and oh my gosh, like, get rid of it. It's giving you cancer. Blah. And everyone's kind of like, oh, cool, I'll still eat it.
I know. It's very, 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 very difficult to navigate that with your family and loved ones, because you just want everyone to feel as good as you feel, and they're just like, nope, I'm happy to feel this level of average forever if it means I get to keep eating what I've been eating and not have to change myself.
It's amazing, like, how many excuses people can come up with. And I get it, it's big, it's different, it's extreme, if you like. But, like, if a doctor came to you and was like, here is this pill, it will help you lose weight, get rid of your acne, get rid of your hay fever, do all this, and there's these side effects, people will be like, yeah, I'll jump on that, I'll have that. And it's like, people are so, I just don't understand why they're not willing to change this one thing. And it's like a lot of people say, oh, it's too hard, or I wouldn't know where to start, or maybe like, oh, I'm doing enough for the environment in my own way. Like, I've got, I've lobbied for whatever, and I have shorter showers and stuff. And it's like, but you could be doing so much more, and, you could be helping your body so much more, and it's just so worth it. But, yeah.
Yes. I think that a lot of it, comes back to just conditioning, and food is just such a religion for people, it's such a religion. We are so from birth indoctrinated into this way of eating, and it's everything we've ever known, and it's so hard to shift, and it's our comfort. A lot of us default, we as from birth, we're basically placated with with junk food. You know, our kids are like, oh, you're crying, here, have a lolly. Oh, you're crying, let's go for an ice cream. Oh, you're crying, let's get McDonald's. So people just think of those foods, and those foods literally say to them, I always go back to Andrew Taylor, Mrs. Budfit, but we seek our emotional support outside of us in food. We seek to feel our joy, happiness, comfort. Anytime we feel any kind of unpleasant emotion, majority of society, rather than deal with it, rather than say, what do I need? I need a hug. I need a boyfriend. I need a new job. I need a holiday. I need to move house or change career or whatever it is. Rather than face those things, we say, I can get some joy from cake. I can get some joy from the pantry. The pantry will have the solution to my unhappiness inside it. And when you say plants could do that, they're just like, what?
No.
Plants cannot do for me what a block of cheese and some crackers and a glass of wine will do for me.
And that's another thing I think, like, people feel trapped in their health destiny, but it's just not the case. Like, people are like, oh, my family was always big, so I'm going to be big, or my family all have heart disease, so I'm going to have heart disease. And it's like, well, actually, if you look at it, like, food is such a big part of our culture that we pass on what we eat to our children and everything. And like you were saying, like, when your kid gets sad, you give them an ice cream. And then when they're older, they'll think, I'm sad, I need an ice cream. And it's kind of like, you know, it's not always going to be a genetic thing. It's going to be a culture thing. It's going to be what you were taught, what you were brought up with. And it's like, you're not trapped in what your family, all the ailments that go back all the years. And, you know, just like with my hay fever, I'll bring that up again. Like, my mum has terrible hay fever. My brother has terrible hay fever. You know, the three of us would be sneezing and blowing our nose and stuff all through the spring season. And now they may still have that, and I don't. And it just kind of baffles me that people don't want to give it a go in, like, you know, it could solve, even if it just solved your weight issue, or if it solved, you know, your hay fever issue, or if it solved your eczema or whatever, like, why wouldn't you want to get on that? Like, and it still confuses me that people are happy to just be like, oh yeah, well, you do you, like, that's fine, you go be vegan, and then that I just will not. And you're like, okay, doesn't make sense.
Oh, they never know. They may eventually. Like, people, I know so many people from my journey, which is part of the reason why, like, because, yeah, part of the reason why I do the work that I do is because, or even if I just militantly post vegan stuff to my personal page, and, you know, everyone hates it, I'm sure, and I'm hoping that most of the people who do hate it have unfollowed me. But I get enough people, old friends, work colleagues, people writing to me saying that they're starting on this journey because of something that they saw on my post or a podcast or whatever it is, that everyone else is like, why won't you just shut up about veganism? And I'm like, I'm not going to, because I know that it's getting to some people.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to, because it's not just about whatever. It's about, like, I love you and I want you to feel good. And I know that I feel good because of this. So it's kind of like...
The thing is, we both weren't always vegan. You know, we found this way too. It wasn't like I was born a vegan. Like, my kids have been, but they're, you know, they might not always be vegan. I won't love them anymore if they're not, but, you know, they know that. I'm kidding. I will still love them. Just less. Just much, much less.
Right.
I'll be forcing myself to love them if they don't stay vegan for their whole life. But no, I'll keep loving them. I was just I'm just paused thinking, will I really? I'm saying this because I should say it as a mother, but... What did you say?
It would be a big challenge to keep loving.
We weren't all born vegan, and it is a difficult, shocking transition. But I mean, once you're this far down the road, I guess I am just like, but like, it's so good for the animals. If it was just really great for the animals, I'd be like, Okay, sure. And it's so good for the planet. And if it was just, better than riding a bike for the planet, I'd be like, sure. It's such an ease for me. I can be such a lazy environmental activist and be vegan and be doing still so much more than if I wasn't vegan and was just tied myself to a tree.
And I'm sort of like, I get so confused when, either you see somebody who's like, oh, I'm a big environmentalist, and then you see them with their plate of eggs or whatever, and you're like, what are you doing? Or if you see someone, what really gets to me is like, if you know all the things about veganism and then you go vegan and then you go back to not, I'm like, why? Is it really that big of a commitment just to not eat animal products? Like, you don't even have to give up everything, because you can always find a vegan replacement for it. I just don't get it.
I think that a lot of people, when they do go vegan, I think that some of the stumbling blocks that I've found in those people are either they've gone like raw vegan for because all the Instagram girls are super hot and they're all raw vegans, and they're eating like a green juice for breakfast and a smoothie for lunch, and they might not be educated enough around what they need to thrive, as far as they might start feeling weak or anemic, and they're over-exercising, along with not consuming enough high-quality whole food plant-based calories. So they become anemic and weak, and their family are like, what are you doing? You're starving yourself to death. You've lost weight. Stop being vegan. And they're like, oh, vegan was killing me. I was fading away vegan. And you're like, look, vegan wasn't killing you. You just need to make sure that you're getting like apps like Chronometer, where you can type in exactly what you're eating for the day and follow it for a week and track what you're eating and say, and it will tell you you're not eating enough of this nutrient. You're not getting enough protein. You're not getting enough carbohydrates. You're not eating enough iron. That's because it is easy. It's very easy to undereat nutrients if you're eating a junk food vegan diet.
Just calories, because you have to eat so much more vegan food, like whole foods, to get the same amount of calories as like one tiny little bit of animal food, because it's just so chock-a-block full of fat and stuff. Yeah, and I've had people I was like, everybody should go vegan. Like, the natural thing for a human body is to eat, whole foods, because all these societies that have lived so long and lived so vibrantly, they've all been plant-based, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, oh, but I knew people who went vegan or went vegetarian and then they started feeling bad and stuff. So obviously some people just need meat, or some people can't do it. And I'm like, well, it's not true. It's not that you can't do it. It's that you weren't eating the right things. And I think, why are you so happy to jump back into meat when you could be finding the same thing in a plant food? It's like, why don't you just do the research and find the vegan option for that, rather than just saying, oh, it's all too hard and giving up?
Yeah. I think that recently, I don't know when I heard it, but just talking about that, you're just getting those nutrients secondhand in the meat. Like, the animal ate them. That's how come they're in the animal flesh. So you're getting secondhand, rather than eating the animal's eaten the thing that you should have eaten to get the nutrient. Instead, you're eating it secondhand through the animal's body parts. If you just eat the whole plant that the animal was eating, then you'll get what the animal got. Like, the biggest, strongest animals we have, rhinos, gorillas, all those big, huge elephants, they're all herbivores, herbivores. They get all those nutrients through plants, just like we do. They just have to eat large volumes of it, and then you be A-okay. But Chronometer is a great thing, and the Dr. Gregor I always find Daily Dozen such a tongue twister. Daily Dozen app, and his book How Not to Die has it in there as well. They're really great resources just to go, okay, check, I've had that, check, I've had that. You can just tick it off and say, yep, I've got that for the day. So that's one of the reasons I think people fail on a vegan diet. The other thing I think is that they buckle to peer pressure in their group. So having a supportive community. So I think if you don't have anyone, online for me was my savior. And I went to a few Melbourne meetups which was my savior because I had no one in my peer group or family who was vegan. And it does help, you know. It says you become the 5 people that you spend the most time with. If they're all meat eaters and not vegan, it's really difficult to be the only one in the pack that's eating that way. So, of course, it's easy to fall back and be like, all right, let's just eat whatever together. I'll get a pizza. I'll have it with cheese. It's okay. So community is a big thing. And then education, like Penelope said, that she had all science behind her when she goes in these conversations. So she's armed and ready. And if you are someone who finds it really hard to challenge the status quo of your peers and your family members, educating yourself is something that helps. For me, it helps the most. If I'm doing something that I know is on the fringe of what the mainstream is doing, I make sure that I've read everything, I've done everything, I've got every answer in my brain list. And sometimes I have them in my phone, arguments. I just type them in like, if they're going to say this, what am I going to say? I'm going to say, I type it in just so not so much about veganism, but other arguments that I've had, you know, just make sure that you're really informed and that you feel really strong about your convictions so that you don't feel like, whoa, someone's challenging me. Oh my God, maybe I shouldn't be vegan because carrots have feelings too. I better stop because the plants are also screaming and the trees are crying and they're sending messages saying we're eating them and pulling it. So we have to just eat animals now because the plants have feelings. And my friend's right. If plants have feelings, I may as well not worry about the animals either.
Yeah. But even if you don't find it easy to engage like in a war, like you don't want to be like, oh no, like here's all the damn facts and get yourself straight.
Don't do that. I'm just saying I just sit there silently and have that in my head, just nodding and smiling and thinking, you can think that, but I'm not saying you have to get your phone out and start reading off the list, but it just having the awareness inside myself helps. So it's not that I read it and spew it out to everyone who I meet who challenges me. Sometimes I have, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I have. I'm a human who can get very emotionally charged about things I'm passionate about.
Feels like this is my destiny. Like I've got to share it with everybody. And like, so you kind of feel like you've got to like, oh, you've never heard this before, clearly because you're eating meat. Like, but even just being there, you know, like we've had people, particular old family friend, like who said to Kane, like, oh, gee, you're looking really good. And, you know, just by being there and being like, yeah, well, actually we've done this and we've gone vegan and I'm feeling better than ever. And people look at you like, oh, you don't look like you're protein deficient. Like you don't look like a skinny hippie. You don't look, you know, like I'm feeling so much more vibrant. And just by being there, I am in a way being active in, you know, spreading the message because I'm like, look, I'm healthy and I'm a vegan. Like, but you don't have to show everybody every single piece of research.
Exactly. And I think that for me has been a slow, long lesson. It's about just modeling it rather than ramming it down people's throats. Even though I think I do a healthy balance of ramming and showing, but yeah, I think that modeling it is such a key thing. Like thriving as a vegan is the best message that we can give people. Well, can you just, before we end, what is your 3 biggest tips for someone starting on this transition? Where would you say if someone was listening to this episode, they already know a bit about veganism, but they're like, oh, I don't know how I would do it. I don't know. What would you suggest, Penelope?
Well, my first one would probably be just do it. Just get started. You know, you're always going to make excuses to whatever else, but I think like literally just give it a go. And don't be like, oh, I'll start on Monday, I'll start tomorrow, whatever. Just do it. Like, just get rid of all
your groceries.
Yeah, do it. And I think, yeah, that's my message because I think a lot of people are kind of like on the fence and they're like, oh, yeah, maybe one day. Well, why not today? Do it. So that would be my first one. And I think the next one will be like, don't be afraid to lose face. Like, I think some people, especially like big meat-eating spruikers who used to eat burgers and sausages and whatever else, and they suddenly go, oh, well, I can't go vegan because I've been making fun of vegans for so long. And it's like, nobody's going to be like, throw it in your face. Like, well, maybe some people will. But it's all about what you want to do with your life. And don't ever be afraid of what other people will judge you for or say to you. It's about you, and this will help you. It will help the planet. It'll help the animals. Like, don't be afraid that, oh, I'm going to go back on my opinion or whatever. Because I think one of the biggest hallmarks of integrity is changing your opinion when new facts come into your life, and being like, oh, well, actually, I'm going to analyze this and be like, this is actually a better way to go, and I'm going to do it. So, yeah, so don't be afraid that you'll be judged.
That's a really good answer, which I haven't heard. And I love getting ones that I haven't heard, but that's such a big challenge for people, especially like you're saying, people who have like maybe mocked vegans previously, and they're like, oh, I have to keep eating meat because I told that vegan that he was bloody whatever.
Yeah, tree hugging hippie or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a really good point, because it is, like, it can be difficult when our egos are so wound up in every single choice that we make. And so, yeah, going vegan if your ego,
it's also like, because it's a cultural thing, like, don't be afraid that your friends won't like you anymore because you used to go out for steak on Thursday night. You can still go out and, get a big pile of potato chips or something instead. Like, it's not about the food. And, I think people are afraid because, all my mates do this, and if I don't do it, then I won't fit in anymore. And I think, like you've said on previous podcasts, that we are creatures of, we're social, and we don't want to feel like we're going to be breaking the norm. But, it's not a big deal. It's just food. It's fine.
I didn't lose any friends. Well, maybe not to my face. Anyway, not to my face. They've all stuck around. But I definitely thought that I was going to lose all of them.
Yeah, and it's not because of what you're eating. Like, if you do lose friends, it's probably because you just keep saying you have to change what you're eating.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Like, eating a potato or you're eating a steak. It's not about that. That good old, I think it's Dr. Seuss quote, it's like, the people who matter don't care, and the people who care don't matter. So there you go. You want to make sure you've got good friends. Do something like that. But yeah, and then the third probably is just, get educated. Like, I started getting into the whole foods, plant-based stuff when I read Dr. Greger's book, and it had a whole chapter on suicidal depression. I was like, I never knew that was connected with food. And because that was something that I struggled with, then I learned more about that, and then I could integrate more about that into my diet. So I just think, try and get educated as much as you can, and join all those groups and read all those books, and you won't regret it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Penelope. I've really loved talking to you, like I always do. It's my favourite thing to talk to people who care about their health and the animals and the planet as much as I do. So thank you so much for coming on the show and writing to me. It was really, I loved it. And I think so many people who are listening will be like, oh my gosh, because that type of diarrhea, gas, nightmare, IBS nightmare, it's happening to so many people, and it is hidden because no one wants to talk about that they've got diarrhea and that they're bloated and feel horrific. But so many people are balancing, walking this tightrope of, is this going to make me constipated or make me have diarrhea, or constipated diarrhea, or am I going to be bloated? Am I going to at this party with this huge pregnant belly just sitting there going, oh my God, I need to fart, but I can't because I'm surrounded by people. And, it's a real struggle. Like, it might not be cancer, it might not be heart disease or, having a stroke, but it's a daily horrible suffering still that goes on that we don't really speak about, and that most people are impacted upon in some way or another, and just think this is just what life's like. I just feel this way whenever I eat food. It's just a gross endless status quo.
You start thinking and you're like, think back to like when I was a kid, I wasn't very healthy either. And I was like, you know what? I used to only go to the toilet like once a week. You know, that's bad. Like I must have felt shit. It's kind of like, why do you just live with that? Like go out and try something and see if it helps. Like that's all you can really do. Get lots of turmeric in you and, you know, all those anti-inflammatory stuff and see how it goes. There's no bad side effects.
Exactly. Just do it. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I could ramble all day.
Yeah.
Lovely to talk to you. Thank you, Penelope, for coming on the show, and thank you all for listening. You can follow Penelope on Instagram at plantbasedpenelope. If you haven't yet subscribed, I put out new episodes every week on Sundays/Mondays, and if you could take the time to leave me a 5-star review and a really kind rating, or just kind, but kind rating, 5-star rating and a kind review. It would really help me to spread this message. Or you can also follow the Facebook page When Life Gives You Lemons Go Vegan, where I share new episodes and also interesting behind the scenes moments each week with you, which would be awesome. And if you know anyone who's living with chronic illness, you can share this podcast via Stitcher app, via iTunes, on my website, and on Facebook. So that would be awesome. Thank you so much for helping me spread this message of hope as far across the world as I possibly can, because that's what I'm doing all this for. So thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Next week, I've got Jennifer on the show, and her story is great. And she was so just wise, articulate, amazing. I really enjoyed listening to her. She has so much great advice and just kind of thoughts about being plant-based, and her journey is just really fascinating. I loved listening to it. So yes, definitely check out Jennifer next week. She lost a ton of weight, and not a ton, that sounds really offensive. Sorry, Jennifer, she lost a lot of weight and overcome some health issues and feels amazing now. So check her out next week. All right, see you later. Bye.